Thank you, Alice. Thank you, everyone. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you for allowing me to be in service tonight. And tonight I get to talk about my relationship with God and how important that is to me and everything I got wrong about the 11th step coming in and out of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous for so many years and what it actually means to me today. And there's a reason I want to talk about everything I got wrong because I was one of those people who came in the rooms and read the steps on the wall and thought I knew what they meant. And sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him. Praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. I see that written on the wall, and I get this image in my head of what that's supposed to look like. That I'm supposed to, end up moving into a monastery or living in a church somewhere, and I'm supposed to be sitting in this constant state of Zen meditation, and that there's no way I can live this functional life, right? And I immediately reject that because, I come in here dripping with contempt prior to investigation. So many years, so many years. The God concept for me was a difficult journey. I talk about this often. My conception of God had to be completely thrown out. I had to embrace those concepts of those very simple concepts of honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness that were read in the beginning of the meeting because, I, I had to be honest with myself that my conceptions, my ideas, and the way I was living my life were no longer working. And they hadn't worked for a very long time. And that I had to get, come to grips with this idea that I not only didn't know everything, I knew absolutely nothing. I knew absolutely nothing about what was necessary for me to change my life and to be set free from what I was absolutely suffering from, like suffering from. And here, let's be real. Like I was suffering with a drink and I'm suffering without a drink because I was suffering from that sober state that was so incredibly painful for me. I needed a solution and alcohol had stopped working for me. It just didn't work anymore. So I'm suffering. And I remember reaching a jumping off point, stone cold sober, separated from alcohol for 18 months by the prison system and not by any true desire to stop. But I have this moment where I'm like at this pivotal place where fear had been keeping me sober. I'm like, I have this moment where I know what's going to happen if I walk out that door. And I can't face that again because the amount of suffering that I had endured and forced everyone else around me to endure. And the idea of what I was going to do, trying to live this life sober. And so this is really where the 11th step comes into play. And what happened for me is I reach a place of absolute brokenness. I am crushed by a self-imposed crisis. I can no longer postpone or evade at 18 months dry. Nothing. Like I'm at that jumping off point, dry, sober. And I can choose to go onto the bitter end, or I can pick up this spiritual kit of tools that had been so lovingly laid at my feet, like time and time and time again, that I had rejected because the God idea I thought wouldn't work for an alcoholic like me. And so all I did was pick it up. There was like I didn't, and I'm exactly what it talks about in the end of the book in the spiritual experience appendix that you read, that I am the educational variety. I did not experience the heavens opening up. I didn't have these white light flashing moments. I didn't get on my knees in that third step like so many people talk about and experience this massive shift. I was like, okay, what now? Right? What do I do now? And then I did what I was told. And then coming in, this conception I have of a higher power is you. It's the group. It's these steps. I see that it's working for you. That's what I have. I see that it worked for the woman sitting in front of me because I knew her, because I drank with her. And that woman was sober. And she was so full of joy. And she was so lit up. And I was like, why not me? Right? So why don't I do what she does? And that's all I've got. Like, why not me? So I try this. And what starts to happen as I go trudge through these steps, because that's what it felt like. It wasn't, I talk about this often. This was awkward for me. This was painful. A lot of this experience through the steps was very uncomfortable because I had to go to places that I had avoided going my entire life. And I had to tell the truth and I had to right wrongs and in my amends process. But as I did this, I started to experience the power that you had all been telling me about. It wasn't a seeking process through books, through reading, through going to church, through all these external activities that I thought I would need to participate in. in order to have this connection with this power. It was a process of removing all of the stuff that I had put in front of a power that had always existed within me. And I didn't know that the only place that I was ever going to find that power was deep, deep, deep down within me. I read that line several times in We Agnostics about the fundamental idea of God that was deep down within every man, woman, and child that may be obscured by pomp, calamity, worship of other things. And I didn't understand it until I had the experience of the subtraction of all that stuff. And some of that subtraction, I wasn't, I didn't really let go of willingly. I fought it at times. But the more I let go, the more I became willing, the more I opened my mind up and just allowed myself to repeat that most spiritual, question I could ever ask myself is, could I be wrong about this? Could I be wrong about this? The more I did that, the closer I started to get to you and to this power, and my life started to change. I started to experience life in a totally new way. And I talk every time I speak about living a life beyond my wildest dreams, because I thought it was about, managing external circumstances and getting the things that I want. Come to find out, it had nothing to do with that. It had to do with the fact that I had been given this beautiful gift, this spiritual kit of tools that allowed me to be present and a part of the life that had been going on around me this entire time, and be able to experience it, which is why I picked this quote, that every day is a day, right? Every day is a day in which I have to carry God's will for me into all of my activities. And this can be something I pick up joyfully. And this is can sometimes be a thing that I have to trudge through that can be painful and uncomfortable. But when my will is aligned with this power, and when my feet are in the direction of this loving power, instead of, pointed in the direction of my ego and my wants and my needs and my desires and trying to fulfill all that, whatever is going on in the outside, I experience in a new and beautiful way. And I spent many years of my life believing I would never be able to trust my thoughts. And I come in and I'm being told I'm powerless over alcohol and my life has become unmanageable and your thoughts are unmanageable and your feelings are unmanageable. And it's true. It's true. I come in here and my thinking is so incredibly delusional. I have these great ideas of like, this homeless guy's going to fix me, right? And, all this, like, this is what I think I need to be okay, right? And as I go through this process and I arrive at these steps and as I continue to do this work, what I start to realize is once I start on this journey and continue on this journey, I can actually have my mind restored to me. I don't know if I missed something vital when I, read those steps, because I really thought I knew what I was doing when it talked about in the second step about being restored to sanity. Well, 10 step is already talking about it. Like, we have the 10-step promises that by this time sanity will have been restored, like, returned to us. So I come in and I'm a saint and I can't trust a single thought that comes to my mind. But then as I get to this 11th step and I'm actually starting to seek a relationship with this power on a deeper level, I realize that this intuition, this vital sixth sense, this quiet, still small voice that has always been within me that I have ignored for the loud voice of the ego. Get this, do this, avoid this. Well, that chaos. When I quiet that down through these 12 steps and through this work, I can tap into that vital sixth sense. And then I begin to be guided by this higher sense of self, by this higher power, by God. And that's what it's talking about here. It wasn't. Now, I want to be very clear about what I said in the beginning. Once I start to have this experience, the book very clearly suggests that I should continue to seek God through meditative practices, reading other books, seeking to see where religious people are right. A lot of stuff that I missed very early on, when all I did in the morning in my sobriety was shoot up a prayer when I left the house and shoot up another prayer at night and, try to chat briefly with God throughout the day. And they missed a deeper experience with this stuff. What happened is, when I reached a point at 8 years sober, when I was just running around the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, two-stepping, and again, stone cold sober, crushed by a self-imposed crisis I can no longer postpone or evade. I'm back on my knees. I'm back to the beginning of these steps, and I'm back to that process, that vital process of removal, subtraction, getting all of that stuff that is obscuring this power out of the way so I can again experience this power working in my life. And once I have that experience, I come to this deep realization, and I'm not going to say I enjoyed that experience at all. It was awful. It was humiliating. I had to make a lot of amends to a lot of sober people, and I had to, a lot of people in the rooms of AA. I hurt a lot of people, and I created a lot of damage, but I'm so eternally grateful that I went through that experience, no matter how painful and uncomfortable it was, because it taught me a lot of things. It taught me this idea that I can't ever reach a point that I think I know what I'm doing here, that I think I know anything. I have to continue to ask myself that question. Could I be wrong? Continue to go back to that. But I also need to infuse steps 10 and 11 in my everyday life, one day at a time, and continue to seek deeper and further a connection with you and a connection with God. And what does that look like? For me, there are some basic disciplines that the book, and listen, I'm an undisciplined person. It says we alcoholics are undisciplined. We need these steps to discipline us. And like you, if you're like me, I need the steps to discipline me, and I need the clear-cut direction that is in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So what do we have as far as clear-cut direction? Well, I have when we retire. And if I'm being honest, which I have to be on this call because my sponsor's here and I usually try to do my best, but I do a nightly review written probably 4 nights a week, and on average on a good week, and send it out. And then the other few nights, sometimes there's a really quick prayer before I go to bed, and sometimes there's an internal review, and sometimes, if I'm being honest, I hit the bed exhausted because my day was crazy and I go to sleep, right? That's the truth. But on the nights that I do take a look at that stuff and I ask myself those vital questions, just kind of catch all the stuff I may have missed in that very important sense step. I need both of these. And I say this every time I talk about 11. I can't talk about 11 without talking about 10, because they are intrinsically entwined with each other. They work together, right? I have to get my awareness of, the problem, the ego, the thinking mind in 10, and I need the power to do something about it in 11. But when I'm not rigorous in my 10, not rigorously watching for selfishness, resentment, dishonesty, and fear, before I retire, and my good friend Don taught me this 2 or 3 years sober, when I heard him speak, he talked about when I retire does not necessarily mean when I'm 2 seconds from falling asleep, but how about when I'm about to turn Netflix on and binge watch some crime drama, It's right before I'm done for the day. I've retired, I'm done work. Whether it's the work of my vocation or the work of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm done. And I can look at this stuff and I can be honest with myself and hopefully with another person about where I may have fallen short, where fear was driving me, where, resentment was driving me, where delusion was getting in the way, where I need to clean something up. I may owe an amends or an apology, and then I sit quietly with this, not to shame myself, not to go down a spiral of, morbid self-reflection about what a horrible human being I am, but this very simple, solid, this self-appraisal of, okay, this is where I need more of God. Areas, and for me, what it looks like is, because I have them all written down in this notebook next to my bed, when I see something coming up, it's a very clear pattern for me where I can see my current agnosticism. Where am I not trusting God with this? Is it every night I'm talking about being afraid about money? Well, maybe I'm just really agnostic in that area of my life. Fear over my daughter, things like that are the things I'm clinging to and I'm trying to control. And when I've gotten a clear view of this, and I've taken some moments to write this down or go through it in my head and my heart, I can take that time to sit quietly and ask God's forgiveness and ask for the corrective measures. Very simply, for me, the corrective measures are, what could I do better? Where do I need more power? Guide me, show me. And the beautiful thing about when I do this, when I'm picking up that discipline, this spiritual tool, it makes it easier for me to transition when I wake up in the morning to that on awakening, because I have not carried that baggage, that garbage from the day before. And in the morning, I actually have some idea and some intention of the power I need to ask God for when I wake up in the morning. Because if it's always like every single day, well, that's that sister-in-law again. I just can't stand her, right? And here it is every night. God, please, when I wake up this morning, give me a loving and tolerant view of my sister-in-law and be helpful to her and to my brother and in the middle of this divorce, right? And so I have these intentions that I can bring to God along with some basic prayers where I ask God to, for the freedom of bondage of self and the things that I need. How about the first thing the book asks us to do is to be divorced from self-pity, self-seeking, and dishonest motives. I wake up married to these ideas. Poor me. I wake up married to self-pity. So I ask God for these things and I go to God with these intentions and prayers, and then I go out into the world. And that's where this vision, this God's will, I must carry with me in all my activities. And that's where it gets more difficult. That's where the challenge comes in. It'd be super easy to have that spiritual experience that I talked about at the beginning of this if all this work is sitting in an ashram somewhere, because I don't actually have to interact with people. I don't have to go to my job. I don't have to be on the subway. I don't have to interact with the world around me. And that makes life a lot easier if because nothing is ever tested. And but instead I live in the real world, and like we do, and I have to do difficult things, and they're not always things I want to do. I mean, I think almost every week I'm talking to my sponsor about there's this thing I don't want to do. For the past several weeks I have been going into my work with my beloved employer, who has been my friend and my mentor and my teacher, and he is actively dying. And every morning I am faced with a new challenge and a new fear that I walk into this place and I have to be useful and helpful in a situation and an environment that I didn't actually sign up for. My mom has been a hospice nurse and an oncology nurse her entire career, and devoted her life to that sort of work. And I remember saying to my mom a couple weeks ago, I don't want this. I don't know how you do this. Because for me, I want to check out when I go to work. I work in corporate law, and I don't want to have to carry around, estate documents and comfort his wife, who also works at the firm, right? So for me, every single morning for the past several weeks, I have had to get up and ask this power to come into my life and allow me to have the strength, the courage, the love, the tolerance, the patience, just the knowledge, what am I to do next? Step-by-step process of what am I to do? And he had a horrible health crisis last week or 2 weeks ago, where we didn't know if he was ever going to have his brain function return to him. And that was every day of not knowing which office I would have to go to work and where I was going to meet his wife every day. Somehow, this power is working in my life to guide me on what to say, what not to say, how to act, how to move, all the things. And I can feel it no matter how scared I am. I wish I could put it into words. Some of the difficult part about talking about step 11 is it's about how do I describe God? And it's there just aren't words. It's about an experience. It's about the experience of being almost on this loving autopilot. Being just guided, a GPS of love where you just sort of know where to move. And today I was supposed to meet my boss's wife to pick up some estate documents at the office today. And I went into work, and she told me she would be there at 8:30, and at 8:25, I look down at my phone and my boss's number, his cell phone shows up, and I'm thinking, I think she might have taken his phone. And I pick up the phone, and he's on the other line, and he's okay. And he is so full of love and joy and gratitude. And he just says, I know I don't really have that much time left. I haven't had my mind with me. And he asked me what cases were going on, and he got right into the business of work. And I'm in the background sobbing while I'm going through the case study, because I know exactly, I'm where I'm supposed to be doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing in that moment, right? This is what I know. And this is what my God reveals to me on a daily basis. And so this is why when Alice reached out to me to ask me to pick a sentence, I didn't even hesitate, because this is what has been running through my mind and my heart with this step every single day for weeks now. And again, it doesn't always mean that we are waking up and the world around us is full of like sunshine and rainbows and everything's always going to be joyful and wonderful. Sometimes it is, right? Like Alice was talking about at the beginning of this, like I get to have this beautiful, amazing experience of connecting with my fellows, my people, with you on a daily basis, all over the country, all over the world. I lived this tiny little life before I got sober. It was so small. I had no friends. Nobody wanted to talk to me. And now my phone does not stop ringing. I am never alone. I am always surrounded by love, even if my head will tell me otherwise. Sometimes even my head's always like, you don't belong. There is a deeper part of me that knows and understands the truth that I have been introduced to and connected with a greater source of love than I could have ever imagined, right? So I have that gift that has been presented to me, and but it requires that I stay connected to the source within me, because I will tell you, if I don't practice 10 and 11, and I start to obscure all the love and light that is within me, I promise you, I do not show up as the same Sarah. I am not the Sarah who wants to go to be helpful at work. I am the one who's bitter and resentful and self-seeking and self-pitying and poor me. But as I continue to do this work and pick up that kit of tools one day at a time, I get to do really cool, beautiful, amazing, sometimes painful, but deeply spiritual things. I get to be the daughter who shows up at her mother's side at her sister's casket when her mother has to bury her child. I get to be the unwavering strength that I was incapable of being, and I get to comfort her. Like, that's not within my power, right? That's not something I was ever capable of before ending up in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, because my go-to is run, my go-to is hide, my go-to is numb, anesthetize. I want to feel good. That's it. This 11th step is not about feeling good. It's not about experiencing spiritual highs. That's not what this is about. In fact, sometimes I did go down this really weird spiral of like 11 steps several years ago, where I just got so heavily involved in meditation that at some point I almost talked myself out of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Like, I don't feel resentment. I was just like, it was so completely delusional because I just isolated and I was just trying to quiet my mind so much that I wasn't living in the real world. The deepest spiritual experiences I've been able to have sober have been some of the most painful, like that moment next to my sister's casket with my mother, or like the interactions with my brother before his death, and my interactions with his my family, and how I was able to show up after his death, right? Like being able to experience the grief and the loss of one of my favorite human beings ever to exist, and people I did not know my life without running or hiding, without numbing the pain, without trying to make this about me, and being able to support and love all the other people around who are also grieving the loss of these beautiful human beings, right? These things are not of my power. Like, these are the things that I am not capable of on my own juice. So I have to continue to do this work to tap more deeply into this power. And, you know, it's always something too, is I don't want to go too far off the rails about what specific things I do as far as my 11th step goes, simply because we're introduced to this idea relatively early on that we get to actually choose our own conception, right? And a lot of the ideas that were impressed upon me as a child didn't work for me coming into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous at all. So I am one of those alcoholics coming in who I thought I'd I'll throw the baby out with the bathwater, thought I abandoned the God idea entirely. And so what happens is as I start to open my mind up more and I start to delving deeper into these practices, and I start to do a lot of inventory, because for me, having a deeper experience in the 11th step for me to have that, it was absolutely necessary for me to really dig deep in inventory at a lot of that contempt prior to investigation. I had a lot of religious entities and a lot of God ideas that were on that resentment list and kept showing back up. But once I sort of peel back all that truth and look at what was underneath that, the fear that was underneath that, I find my way back to a God and to a power that works for me. Some of it includes some of the old stuff. Some of it is just new stuff. And it's just really a big old blend of all of it. But the truth is it's something that I can connect with more deeply when I seek to see where other people are right, where religious people are right, instead of looking at what I can do to pick apart where people are wrong. Because I come in here on the debating committee. Well, that doesn't make sense. I could disprove that in one argument, all of this nonsense, right? I think I'm smarter than you, but I can't breathe a sober breath. So abandoning all of those old ideas, what happened with that after I abandoned them and did this work and start connecting with you and start connecting with God, I ended up landing back in some of the same places. And so I get to have these beautiful experiences through going a little further, right? And that was something it took me a little while to do in my sobriety because, I stayed just strictly to the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous for a really long time. And I didn't go out and read other books. But the more I expand this, the more I expand my seeking, the more I can find what helps me more deeply connect with this power and what actually just simply doesn't work for me anymore. But the truth is like, I won't know until I try. I won't know until I go seek. And I think for me, that's the seeking part. And I think that's the part that looks really different or may look really different for all of us. So I don't want to get into too many specifics, but it's something, another discipline I absolutely need to do. It's something I absolutely need to be willing to do, willing to keep an open mind and willing to go further. But for me, even with all of that, even with all the books that are out there, all the meditative practices that are out there, even with all the knowledge and the stuff that is out there, for me, the way I feel closest to God is through you, is through service, is through the abandonment of self, is through, because even my darkest hours and my most beautiful, joyful moments, both things have shown up in my life, and that is Alcoholics Anonymous. And I have this gift that has been given me, which is the ability to sponsor women. When it's all falling apart, where I perceive that it's all falling apart around me, the one place where I feel the most love, the most power, the most connection is when I'm sitting with that woman who's just broken. And I'm not thinking about me anymore. I'm thinking about what can I do for her? When I'm sharing the language of the heart with my sponsor or with a friend. And when, like Alice said, I can be my true self, the thing that I hid from you and from everybody else my entire life, when I don't have to hide that anymore. When I can present that to the world, and the place in the world I feel most safe presenting that to is the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. When I can do that, that is how I connect most deeply with my higher power. That is how I connect most deeply with God. I'm not saying don't do all the other stuff. I'm not saying, in fact, the book is pretty clear. It says, nothing so much will ensure immunity as intensive work with other alcoholics. This works when all other methods fail. That kind of implies that we should try all these other methods as well, right? I have to try to connect with God. However, that for me, through all of the losses that I've experienced in my sobriety, through the painful things that I've had to walk through, the painful things that we will all have to walk through, because none of us are promised a free and easy ride here. Through all of that, the one thing that has allowed me to connect more deeply with God has been service to others in Alcoholics Anonymous. And that is a gift I am infinitely, infinitely grateful for. I honestly, my throat is starting to hurt, and I don't know if I'm not even timing myself, so I don't know how long I went on for here, but I'm going to open this up. I'm going to end here so I don't start letting too much of me get in the way here, and open it up to questions or hear from you guys. So thank you so much. I love you all.
The topic is every day is day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. So I'm looking for hands. I can read, so I will call on you if I don't see a hand. And my friend John, come on, John.
Hi everyone, my name is John. I'm an alcoholic. I'm also Alice's biggest fan, and Sarah, thank you so much for a beautiful share. My question for you is, I've been feeling extremely disconnected the last few months, and I shouldn't be, but I do. So along your journey, have you felt disconnected, and what helps you get back on track when you find yourself in those moments beyond working with others? What other suggestions might you have?
Ooh, I could do a whole hour talk about this alone right here. How many times I felt disconnected from, from others, from God, from all of this. And I love, love, love. I don't even know if you spotted that you said this, but you said something really important that is a mind trick that my head will always tell me I shouldn't be feeling this. I shouldn't be like this, right? Because once I start doing that, what happens is for me, my experience was I would say I have 8 years sober. I shouldn't be feeling disconnected. And you know what I did with that? I didn't tell anybody until it was so bad, right? Because I don't want to admit I have X amount of days. And so I'm not supposed to tell you I feel disconnected. I feel lost. I feel broken. I feel all of these things that are really uncomfortable. And you know what's crazy is once I did, I had that thought. Actually, I wasn't quite at 8 years. I had 7 years, but my head was telling me the same thing. I shouldn't feel this way. But it got so bad and got so uncomfortable that I reached this fork in the road where I just knew deep within my soul if I didn't do something, I was going to walk out that door and probably never come back. And and what I did was I picked up the phone and I did that simple, scary, terrifying thing and I asked for help. And here's the coolest thing I found out is that the solution remains the same, whether you have 7 hours, 7 days, 7 weeks, 7 months, 7 years, 70 years, the solution remains the same. For me, what it required is I kind of had to go back to the beginning to look at some first step problems, on manageability stuff I was having, second step, agnosticism stuff, third step. Was I making that decision to turn my will in? Or was I like I was living in pages 60 to 63. It was like I just wanted everybody to play by my script. Like I literally had to go back to the beginning without a drink in my hand. And what happened was I had a new experience with these steps, looking at it from a sober angle, from this emotional sobriety standpoint, where it was no longer about actively drinking. It was about what was going on with the spiritual malady within me and doing some house cleaning there before it got to a drink again. Because I know my truth. I know my truth in the beginning and then it'll always go back there if I don't do something about it. That's why I do not have that power. But that power can be restored to me if I continue to do this work. So I hope that helps or answers your question.
Thank you for a great question, John and Sarah. Thank you for a beautiful, beautiful answer. Come on, Zelda, come on in.
Hi.
Andrew, you're up next. iPhone, please cut your camera on for us.
Hi. Sarah, what a beautiful share. When you ended, I was just like, oh my God, she's finished. I need more. Zelda, alcoholic addict. My question is, you ended the share where, before I get into it, let me end. How do you know when it's more God and less you in what you're saying or how you're speaking versus to a newcomer or just speaking in general? And what do you do to stay in God and less of you?
Thank you, Zelda. That's actually a really good question. I had a friend of mine ask me, because I've been speaking a lot lately, and friend of mine asked me, how do you prepare to speak? And I said, I don't. And I'll tell you why I don't, because the second my head starts telling me, well, if you said this, you would sound really smart or intelligent. Or if like my head is trying to work a way to sound impressive in any way, that's me. That's me. There's this like stage character of Miss Alcoholics Anonymous that wants everybody to cheer and say, "Oh, hello, you just saved everybody in AA." It's nuts, and it's like I can hear it. Like I can almost watch it enter the chat. And when I see it come in, I can just spot it, like where it's starting to critique what I'm saying. and it starts to get a little bit louder. And truthful, sometimes I am able to use a lot of our prayers, like, dear God, like, help me in this moment, like, relieve me of the bondage of self, because that's what it is. It's a bondage. It's an idea. It's a false belief and an idea that I have to say or do something different. There's just a different feeling I get when I'm speaking from my heart rather than my head. There's a deeper truth that I feel, and frankly, when I'm speaking from this heart place, it just seems to flow naturally. I don't have to look for words. It just comes out. But when I start having to find the right word or find the right phrase, forget it. It's me. It's me. So again, it depends. Sometimes I've been able to redirect it and get myself back out of the way. And I don't know if it's my physical illness tonight or the fact that I panicked and had no clue because I never timed myself and didn't know if I was going to go over. But tonight I wasn't quite sure, so I decided to just cut it. And I hope that helps.
That was a great question, Zelda, and of course, Sarah, that was lovely. Andrew, it's always good to see you, my friend. Please come in.
Good evening, beautiful souls, all. Alcoholic Andrew. Thank you, Sarah. You struck a lot with me here. And it just really struck me, this danger of falling away from this power. But you hit something very hard. And my question will be, I don't know why, but I get people calling me and they ask me if they can vent. And I said, well, I think that's why I was given ears. And this business where I'm not doing intensive work, but just simply listening deeply to another human being, that's powerful. I didn't understand that before. I didn't understand how to literally be human. So my question is on just simply listening to another human being.
Ooh, I love that question. I read this book a couple years ago called An Unpopular Study of the Last Three Steps. I don't know if it's everybody's thing, but it really touched my heart, and it kind of gave me a new perspective of how to show up in a 10-step. That I'm human power, right? For so many years, in an inventory and a 10-step, I showed up trying to fix you. I showed up trying to offer you some kind of guidance or direction. Now listen, that's not to say that if I have some insight or awareness that perhaps somebody else isn't seeing, I can lovingly offer that. But if someone is broken, I remember when my siblings died, the most beautiful thing anybody did for me in AA was not say any words, but sit with me and let me talk about these human beings, right? It was the greatest gift anybody gave me. Nobody tried to fix it. Nobody tried to tell me they were in a better place. They're going to be okay. Nobody said a word. That holding that space, the love and the power that exists in that space, that is God. That is love right there. That's what I feel about that. And I want to say I wish I had learned that sooner, because I spent a lot of years in AA trying to fix people when they called me with a problem. And what I really want to do is just try to love people. And, but you know what? I had to have that experience too. I had to have the experience of trying to manage them and then understand that the true journey for me now is and the true service I do provide is to hold that space and that love for another one of God's kids, especially when they're suffering. So thank you for that absolutely beautiful question.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Sarah. Michelle.
Hi, Sarah. I really, I'm listening to all these questions, and then my head got all scrambled because basically I don't even know. You just touched me, because I think I identified so much with you that, I came to Alcoholics Anonymous at the age of 25, and I'm now 75. So that's 50 years of sobriety. And let me tell you that, that first, you were talking about how, I didn't pick up anything. I made the group my higher power. I made Alcoholics and my higher power. I didn't want God. I didn't want to be sober. And that change came for me through my sponsees, because I didn't even sponsor anybody for 10 years. And my sponsees really, God entered my life, and I could tell you the time, the exact time, and then where I was standing and where they were, and exactly how it felt. I had a visceral reaction to God entering my spirit and saying, "This is enough." They're in the other room saying the great Michelle. And that's when everything started to switch. And also the fact that, well, I lost my husband, my sister first, my husband, and now just recently my brother-in-law. And like you were saying about my sister was hard. It was the hardest one of the three because she was young. And I wailed and I cried and I was a mess, and I calling people, and I was in a hospital in Long Island, and I was walking down the halls calling a sponsee because she lost her brother and her father within 2 weeks. So I knew she understood. And that reaching out and just giving her my pain, and what she didn't say much, she just listened to me. And then when my husband died, I wasn't wailing and crying like that. And I was feeling bad about that. And then like all this change over these 50 years of myself that I could see so clearly looking back in hindsight has brought me to this place where I'm at peace, and I'm at total, probably peace. Like there's a thing we see as a little black book, the 24-hour day, and my birthday is January 5th, and it says, "I pray for the peace that passes all understanding. I pray for the peace the world can neither give nor take away." And that's the kind of peace I feel. And this world is freaking crazy. And if I let that world come into me, then I get crazy, you know? So, and the other thing you said too that I identify with was, how do you know it's you or God speaking? And that's why I always start my speaking with bringing God into the room by my breath. Because I've done that silly one time I did decades. What a mess that was. But overall, I think that if anybody is new on this meeting, and maybe this is how I'm going to end it, because I really don't have a question. I just had to let you know how much I identified with you. There was so much in your story, but I don't want to take everybody's time, but I'm going to end with this. If you're new and you think that at 5 years, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years that you're done, I'm here to tell you you're not done. At 50 years, I am not done. And I welcome the change. I welcome the challenges. I welcome anything that God's going to put in my path, because I have been given these awesome tools to deal with life on life's terms. My first sponsor said, "You learned, A is like a schoolroom. You learn how to live in the real world. You don't live in AA." And I've carried that since 1975. So thank you so much for your wonderful share. And I'm sorry I don't have a question, but I just had to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. That was lovely. So I don't have another hand up. I'm going to ask Sarah a question and wait for the hand because I know there's another question. So people may not know that you are what other people call a iPhone. I'd love to see you turn your camera on so I can call on you and unmute you. You're what, and I don't like this term, so forgive me, a circuit speaker, right? A podium speaker. And so you get to speak a lot. And the humility, this thing you said over and over again, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. And if you would just say a little bit more about that for people, how that is a practice in your life.
Oh, that's a great question. So, I had this experience several years ago where I through speaking and connecting with people all over the country. I was out on the West Coast in Seattle, and I connected with somebody who I sort of knew through a mutual friend, who talked to me about this idea of going back and unraveling a lot of the core beliefs I had and looked at an inventory from a core belief standpoint, like the things that I had been believing about the world and its people my entire life, like starting from a very young age. And I started to look at inventory and do some practices that helped me look at inventory, that all my resentments and all of my fears and all of these judgments and opinions and ideas that I have about the world are all based on a core belief system that I have been carrying with me for as long as I remember, right? And some of it starts from pain and trauma and loss, and some of it starts from just a protective, something I've been doing to try to protect myself my entire life, right? I don't necessarily believe, I used to think the ego was evil and bad. I don't necessarily believe that. I think it's been trying to protect me my whole life. It just has no idea how. And it offers me a lot of crap. It offers me a lot of really poor ways to try to protect myself. And so what happens is I walk into any given situation and I think it's bad or it's wrong. And I think it's something to be afraid of, right? You're not going to like me. They don't like me. I'm going to fail at this. My daughter is an alcoholic, like a recent fear that has been cropping up, like all of this stuff. And if that's true, her story is going to be just as horrific as mine, and she's going to have to go through horrible, all of this stuff. And the question, could I be wrong, is the question I need to ask myself in those moments of all those ideas, all those opinions about, oh, my sister-in-law is evil and she wants to destroy my brother. But could I be wrong? But could I be wrong? Could it be that she's scared? Could it be that she's absolutely terrified of changing her entire life and she doesn't know a different way? She's got her core beliefs, right? Could it be that my daughter just is a hard drinker? Could I be wrong? And that she's going through a phase and she's stressed out, right? Or could it be that even if she is an alcoholic, that her story will not exactly be the same way? Every single time it's just like questioning this idea that I have about this situation, how it's looking, how it's supposed to look, or how it's going to end up. I can invite God in. I can invite power in. Because if I'm not questioning that, I become the ultimate power and I am acting based on that idea in my head being the truth. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but that is the only way I think I can describe it and how it's been changing the way I approach life.
What a powerful lesson. What a powerful lesson. So iPhone, I'm gonna unmute you. I think that you're saying it's really dark where you are. Come on in. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Laura from Boston. Can you see my face?
No, but we're happy you're here, Laura.
Oh, God, I'm sorry. Really?
It's okay.
I can see me, so I'm like awkwardly looking at the camera. Alice, it's so funny. A friend of mine shared this meeting with me tonight, and my first ever AA meeting almost 5 years ago after was Bronx Big Book Step Study, and I was like, oh my God. So that's God acting through people. But thank you so much for your share and your service. Something that really struck to me was when you said removal and subtraction. And in my life, in my God, the way I was raised, it was no, increase and addition. And right now, I'm in this place where the removal and the subtraction of people is for me to get closer to God and my values. And those people are in the program. So my question to you is how do you handle things that from removal and subtraction when you're getting closer to your higher power, which seems like exactly like mine through people, like my friend offering me this and then seeing all this and then this share, and really struggling recently in 5 years sobriety, having gotten out of a hospital stay for other struggles, to reconnect to that power that got me sober 5 years ago. And do you run up against that? And if so, how do you handle when it seems like you're going against the grain, removing and subtracting, but it's for the good to be able to give service to people that are my same vibe and same energy, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yes, it does.
I figured.
Yeah. And so this is a little uncomfortable for me to talk about because I don't want it to get taken the wrong way, but I come into Alcoholics Anonymous and I read the phrase love and tolerance of others is our code. And I took this to a very extreme degree, and I put myself in positions and in friendships and relationships with people who were causing me active harm, and accepting unacceptable behavior under the guise or message of love and tolerance is our code. And I walked in here with a lot of fear and self-doubt and self-loathing and lack of self-worth. And again, what I'm subtracting are those lies, the delusion, the false belief that I have no value, that I have no worth. And the more that I subtract that, there is an automatic subtraction sometimes of relationships and people that I want to be so careful with my wording because I don't want to say I'm ridding myself of people, but I think there's a natural shedding of relationships that are just not aligned, like where we're not walking the same path, we're not in the same, we're not in the same fellowship, and that's okay. My amazing sponsor just told me a few months ago when I lost two friendships that I thought were very dear to me, that the greatest gift that I received such an infinitely priceless gift from two people who had harmed me, and with their words and their behaviors was they gave you the greatest gift imaginable, which is the truth of who they are and the path they're on and where they are. And that's it. And it's my work to be able to live in the truth, right? I have to be able to, because when I'm not living in the truth, what happens? I lose my authenticity. I sit in rooms with people who may be saying hateful and awful things about other groups of people, and I stay silent, and that is inauthentic and dishonest. So for me, it's been a journey of spiritual growth and spiritual courage, because I have to trust God enough and rely on this power enough to know that even with this subtraction, whatever that subtraction may look like, I still end up with a life more full of love than I could have ever imagined. And that has been the reality, as long as I am awake and aware enough to see that even if there are losses that I experience and it feels painful and it feels like the outside isn't looking like it used to, or things have changed or relationships have changed, I get to experience a more authentic love, a more authentic connection, a more authentic power, and a deeper truth. And what all that requires is the same thing, the same solution is I go back, I do this work, I do this inventory, and I seek power. That's it. Thank you for the beautiful question.
Thank you for the beautiful question, and thank you for sharing with us the magic of Alcoholics Anonymous. It was good to see you.